So today we're going to be factoring pattern for, again, the leading coefficient is 1. Okay, 1x² plus bx plus c. And you may say, wait, that's the same thing as what we did last time. Oh, I'm sorry. But is this same as what we did last time? If it is like this, yeah, but now we're going to say c is negative. So if you notice, last time we only factor the trinomial with the leading coefficient to be 1, where c is positive. Now we're going to deal with trinomials with c being negative. Is that okay? So it turns out, as long as the leading coefficient again, you see it's 1x². If it's 1x², it's pretty simple to factor these things, these trinomials, okay? So you will see that the method of figuring out how to factor these trinomials is really similar to what we did last time. Okay, so let's start with our first example. x² minus x minus now 30. Okay, so we have x² minus x minus 30. And what do you guys think? Take a wild guess. What are we going to do with this negative 30? We're going to figure out? Anyone? Yes?
We're going to figure out how the product is a positive and negative.
Right, we're going to figure out two numbers so that the product of the two numbers is negative 30. Does that make sense? You see, remember we did little bubbles and so forth, right? So how many ways are there to multiply two numbers so that you get 30? What's the easiest one? Yeah.
1 and 30.
1 and 30. If you could have 1 and 30, does that give you negative 30?
Oh, negative 1.
Good. Negative 1 and positive 30. Well, if you could have negative 1 and positive 30, what else could you have?
Negative 30.
Yeah, so you could have the other way around. So I'm going to write both of those together. Is that okay? Now, only thing you have to be careful now is what? When the last number is negative, you just have to make sure that one of the number is positive and the other is negative. Does that make sense? Right? If they were both positive, would this work?
No.
Would it give you a negative number? No. If they were both negative, would it give you a negative number? No. They have to have different sign, right? One of them has to be positive, the other must be negative in order for that number to be negative. Do you see the difference from what we did last time from this? Okay, that's the only difference. So Carolyn, what else we're going to 30? 1 goes in, of course, and what?
2, negative 15, or
Sure.
negative 2.
Exactly. So isn't this what we did last time? Same. Okay. If 2 goes in, does 3 go in? Yeah, it's easy. 3 times what, class?
10.
Is it 10 or negative 10?
Negative.
Negative 10. If you could have 3 times negative 10, of course you're going to have 3 times negative 3 times positive 10. Is that all? No. Does 4 go into 30?
5 times.
5 does. 5 times what?
Negative 6.
Negative 6. Good. And if you could have 5 times negative 6, you could also have negative 5 times 6. And then you see how after the number after 5 is 6, you see how it wraps around? That's when we stop, right? Because 6 we're going to negative 30, and then 10, and 15, and 30. It will go over. Now, when you multiply, how do you get trinomials? By multiplying two binomials. Of course, there's an exception. If the two binomial is a plus b times a minus b, right? So, but most of the other times, right? Two binomials, when you multiply two binomials, you will get a trinomial, right? So it's gonna, in order to get x², of course, don't you have to have x and x here, right? And then we have to now figure out the two number that goes in. So go ahead, everybody, think about what number will go in there, and I'll wait, figure this out, okay? All right, who thinks they know? How about somebody around? How about Dakota? Were you able to figure out the number that should go in? Which two numbers do you think will work?
Oh yeah, 5 and negative 6.
5 and negative 6. How many people agree with 5 and negative 6? Very good. Do you see how this works out? Okay, we could always check. That's why I wrote them vertically, right? When you multiply them vertically, you get the first and the last term. Those are one of the easier ones. And then, of course, you got to check the middle one. That's the diagonals. What is x times negative 6, class? Negative 6x plus, what's 5 times x? 5x. So what's negative 6x plus 5x? I wrote it down here. Negative x. See, that checks, doesn't it? And there's my answer, x plus 5 times x minus 6. Do you see how simple it is? Right? Do you see how it's very similar to what we did last time? All we have to do is, right, one of the number has to be positive when you write down these possible factors of that last term, right? Does that make sense? Do you guys get the idea? So it's really not that different than what we did last time. You just have to be careful that one of the numbers is negative. All right, may I go to example 2? Okay. Example 2, here we go. W squared minus 2w minus 35 is the second example. And this time, I'm going to have you do it yourself. Okay, of course, you could talk to your group. Go ahead, I'll wait. W squared minus 2w minus 35. Can you factor this trinomial? Go ahead, guys. Try it. So, how many ways are there to multiply two numbers so you get negative 35? I'll give you the first one. 1 and negative 35. Okay. And of course, if you're going to have 1 and negative 35, you could have negative 1 and 35. Okay, Song, what can you have next? What else go into 35? 5 and 7. Okay, and of course, one of them has to be negative. Okay, be careful, right? So you could have 5, negative 7, or negative 5, 7. Are there any other ones? No, that's it. So all you have to do is choose which two pairs you need, right? Which pairs you need. So of course, in order to get w squared as your first term, you're gonna need for the two binomials to have. For the first term of the two binomials must have w and w, right? So you just have to figure out what goes in. Would you not agree? Okay, Mimi, what do you think will work?
Negative 7 and positive 5.
Negative 7 and positive 5 is correct. How many people agree? I just said it was correct. Okay, so by the way, how come the other one doesn't work? Why can't we do negative 5 and 7? Wouldn't that work? No, it wouldn't, because in order for the middle number, middle term to be negative 2, right? You have to have more negative, right? So when you do, that's why I like this vertical method, right? You could see when you do the cross, you're gonna get 5w, and then here you're gonna get negative 7 times w. You get negative 7w. You see how you get the diagonals will give you the middle term? So don't you get negative 7w plus 5w? And you get 2w. So checks. Chuck, did you have a question?
No, yes.
So yeah, you thought that was the other way around, didn't you?
No, but I put that down, but I just wondered why.
Oh, why it couldn't be the other way? You're right. If I put positive 7 and negative 5, again, the middle term will be positive 2w. You see, they'll be different. It'll be wrong, right? So the answer, Chuck, is what?
W plus 5 times W minus 7.
You got it. You see? Does that make sense? Right? So if it does factor, there's only one way that you could factor. Okay? Does that make sense? Any question there? So this is pretty straightforward. All right. May I move on to example 3? How many people got this, by the way? Right. Raise your hand. How many people see now how to fix this? Some of you. Do you guys see a mistake? Okay. All right. Let's go to example 3 then, and hopefully this time you won't make mistakes. Okay. Example 3 is a little bit different than the first two, but it's not that different. We have x squared plus 3xy minus 18y squared. And this one is a little bit different as you write this down. Think about why I said this is a little bit different than the first two examples. Anybody see why this example 3 is? Yeah, Sam? There are two variables. You have x and y, right? So again, this is a polynomial with 3 terms, right? In order to get trinomial, you have to multiply 2 what? What do you have to multiply? You have to multiply 2 binomials to get a trinomial. Isn't that the only way, right? So, what do you think these two binomials, which variables would these two binomials have for the first term? Chris? X. What about the second term? It must have, in order to get y squared as the last term, the second term must have what? Y. Don't you think it's going to have to look something like this? Would you not agree? If it didn't look like this, would you get x squared for the first term and then the y squared for the last term?
No.
No. Okay, so you know it's going to look like something like this, right? Do you understand? Okay, now let's look at then negative 18. How many ways are there to multiply two numbers so you get negative 18? Eugene, what's the first method? I'll show you actually the first one. 1 and 18. What's 2 and 9? Are there any others, class? Camila? 3 and 6. Are there any others? Are there any others?
Yeah.
No, that's it. But notice, I did something different than the other one, right? I didn't write down all the possible ways of multiplying two numbers to get negative 18. I just wrote down 118, 2, 9, 3, 6. The reason why I did this is sort of a shortcut. I just have to remember then, what? One of the number has to be negative. You know what I mean? So I don't want to write down the whole thing. It's sort of same thing, right? So I don't want to write it twice, you know. So even though I know that positive 1 times positive 18 doesn't give you negative 18, right? But even though I know in my head, I know that, oh, I have to have one of them to be negative, right? And by the way, I have to check anyway, right, when I plug it in. So you could sort of do this too. Okay? You see how it cuts down your work by half, right? You don't have to do it. So you will find that I'll be doing this now, from now on. Now that we're used to this, okay, we're just going to write down, right, the order pairs, just knowing that one of them has to be negative. Does that make sense? So now you have to just choose which one that goes in. Go ahead, everybody try. I'll wait. How about Libby? What do you think? What I will need?
X plus 6y, x minus 3y.
X plus 6y and minus 3. How many people agree with Libby? Very good. She is correct. Okay. So we need x plus negative, I mean, you said 6y, right? 6y and negative 3y. Let's see if it works, okay? So x times x, you get x squared. X times negative 3y, you get negative 3xy. You see how you get two variables, right? And then 6y times x, you get 6y. And yes. And then, of course, last two terms, 6y times negative 3y, don't you get negative 18y squared? Right? So it all checks, doesn't it? Positive 6y plus negative 3xy will give you positive 3xy, doesn't it? Okay, so Eric, what's the answer?
X minus 3y in parentheses x plus 6y.
Here you go. Okay. Easy enough? Oh, sorry. Easy enough? Does that make sense? Okay. How many people got the answer this way? Raise your hand again. Good, most of you. If you didn't, do you see where you made a mistake? Okay. There's only one way to do this. Okay. There's no other. Okay. Wait. Okay. So when you factor these, if it factors, there's only one way. Okay. All right. May I go to example 4 then? Okay. Is this pretty straightforward? Okay. Let's go to example 4. If you got the previous one, everybody try this one here. Example 4. I'll give you time. M squared minus 34mn minus 72n squared. So if you got the previous example, you shouldn't have much trouble doing this one. Of course, you could help each other out. Okay, go ahead. I'll wait. Here. All right. So this one, the hardest part is looking at the factors of 72, right? But before we do this, let's talk about what these two binomial must look like, right? It must have, the two binomial must have what in the first term? Yes, Lindsay?
It must have like an m plus something n.
Good. M plus something n times m plus something n again, right? Very good. In order to get n squared, right? That's the only difference. Now, like I said, the hardest part is actually looking at the factors of 72, right? The two pairs of integers that, you know, give you the 72 as a product. So I'll give you the first one, 1n, 72. That's easy. Does 2 go into 72? Of course it does. It's an even number. 2n, 36. Again, I'm not going to write one of them to be negative, the other to be positive. Is that okay? I'm just going to write these because I know one of them has to be negative, right? When I plug it in. Right. And does 3 go into 72? Yeah. 77 plus 2 is 9, so 3 goes into 72. How many times? 24. Does 4 go into 72? Yes. How many times? 18. Good. Does 5 go into 72? No. What about 6?
Yes.
How many times? 12 times. What about 7?
No.
What about 8?
9 times.
Does 9 go into 72? Oh, 8 goes into 70 times? Okay, here you go. And then you see how he wraps around? Okay, so we know one of them has to be negative. Now, the question then is, which one of these will work so that when you multiply them, you get m squared minus 34mn minus 72n squared. Who's Christina? Did you figure out which one works?
Negative 36 n and 2n.
At negative 36 and 2n. How many people agree with Christina? Okay, how many have a different answer? Okay, would negative 36 and 2n work? The answer is yes. Look, check. What's m times n? That's not 2m, m squared, right? That's what we wanted. Well, let's check the last one. Of course, negative 36n times 2n, wouldn't that give you negative 72n squared? Right? We just said it, right? On the right side, that's the work. And then, of course, the hard part is to figure out the middle one, right? So m times 2n, what do you get, guys? Positive 2mn. What about negative 36n times m? Negative 36m. Doesn't that give you negative 34mn? Right? So that checks. Therefore, we have the answer, don't we? Matthew, what's our answer? Yeah, cool. Any question? Raise your hand. Is this easy? Pretty straightforward? Okay, can you do something like this for your homework tonight? Yeah, it's very simple. It's really similar to what we did last time. Let's look at next example. Okay, go ahead and look at example 5. You got u squared minus 5uv minus 10v squared. Okay, go ahead and factor. I'll wait for you. Okay, everybody try. All right, many of you I think have the right answer. Okay, first of all, we know, okay, how many ways are there to multiply two numbers so they get negative 10? Yeah, you get, I'll give you the first one. I actually wrote this one out for this time. 1 negative 10, if you could have 1 negative 10, you could also have negative 110. Then I did 2 times negative 5, and of course you could also have negative 2 times 5. Are there any other? No. Okay, and of course, in order to get u squared and then the v squared as the last term, you need u plus something v and then u plus something v, right? Now, anybody know why I wrote down all 4 possibilities for this one? Yeah, Samuel? Yeah, this one, none of these work, does it? Did anybody find a number that will, 2 numbers that will work for this? No, none of these work, does it? Guess what? That means this trinomial is what? Prime. So you need to write down prime trinomial. Don't just write prime, because prime, when you write prime, it could be prime number. We're talking about trinomial that is prime. So you need to write, or prime polynomial. Yeah, you could write prime trinomial or polynomial. Okay. So, any question on example 5? Will all polynomials be factorable? No. Some of them you won't be able to. But if I ever give you one like this is the hardest question, isn't it? Because you have to look for every possibilities, right? Otherwise, right, if you leave something out, right, then you're not sure, right? What if one of those were the one that works, right? So you gotta look for every possibilities, right? And if none of them work, then you could write down prime polynomial. Is that okay? All right. Let's do the one last one. Example 6. Here's example 6. You have ab in parentheses square minus ab in parentheses minus 2. Okay. And this one looks different than all the other ones. Okay. But if you recognize one thing, then this problem turns out it's pretty straightforward. So write this down. How many people see the trick that they're playing here? Okay, good, a lot of you. If you go ahead and talk to your neighbor, see if they see it. Go ahead, explain it to them. What are they doing here to make you kind of get confused? Okay, who could explain the trick that they're playing so that it looks like something that's kind of hard to do, but turns out, Patty, what are they really doing?
The a plus b is the x.
Yeah, they're instead of x, they're using just a plus b. Do you see that? In other words, by the way, for negative 2, how many ways are there to multiply? Yeah, there's only one. Well, 2, right? Negative 2, 1, 1, negative 2. Anyway, but again, of course, isn't this really this? X squared minus x minus 2. Isn't that right? Instead of x, what are they using? A plus b. Remember, I told you that instead of x, right, they could use any polynomials they want, right? Isn't this still a trinomial, right? Something squared minus some number minus a constant number. Does that make sense? So, in order for this to factor, you know that it's got to be 2 binomials multiplying. What do you need for the first term of these 2 binomials? So quiet now. Oh, look, if I have x squared minus x minus 2, it has to be x plus something and x minus something, right? Instead of x, what am I using? A plus 2. So guess what I have to do for what I need for the 2 binomials, so that when I multiply, I get a plus b squared. One person see it? 2. Okay, a lot more now. Yes, what do you think here, Aaron? A plus b plus something and a plus b plus something else. Isn't that right? Do you see that? Instead of x, all we were using is what? A plus b. So, right? Do you understand? Because look, if you don't believe me, you could check. What's a plus b times a plus b?
A plus b squared.
Isn't that a plus b squared? Isn't that what we get? And of course, we're going to have to do the cross right here. And of course, what do we need? Again, we need negative 2, not positive 2. So anybody see what we need so that we get negative of a plus b? Claire?
Negative 1 and 2.
Do you think it's negative 1 and 2?
Yeah.
All right. Look at the middle term. Is it negative or positive? So if I have negative 1 and 2, would it give you negative a plus b?
Oh, wait.
You want to change your mind? What do you think it should be?
1 and negative.
1 and negative 2 is correct. Would you agree? Does that make sense? Then, of course, we could check. You could multiply a plus b times a plus b, right? You get a plus b, whole thing squared. Plus here you get a plus b. Here you get 2 of the a plus b, right? So isn't that how you get negative 1, really? Negative 1 of a plus b. And then the last term, what's positive 1 times negative 2? Negative 2. Isn't that what we get? Do you guys see that? So Chris, what's our answer?
A plus b squared minus a plus b minus a squared.
Well, that's what we had before. We want, don't we want to factor this? So
A plus b plus negative 1.
negative 1? Are you sure?
1.
Huh? Say the whole thing again. Okay. So what's the answer? Look it up. Look up here. You should have the answer.
A plus b plus 1
Uh huh.
times a plus b minus 2.
Good. How many people got a plus b minus 2, a plus b plus 1? You could write the other way around, right? Any question? Do you see the trick that they're playing? Do you guys get that? Some of you may think, wait, can we just multiply the whole thing out and simplify the whole thing? And yeah, you could do it that way, but which way is easier? Yeah, you have to realize instead of x, they're using some polynomial. Does that make sense? That's all they're doing. It follows the same pattern as what we've been studying, okay? Does this make sense? Can you do something like this for your homework tonight? Yes? Any questions? No? We good? All right then.